All right, welcome back. Is a government shutdown just over the horizon? The U.S. Senate is aiming to vote next week on raising Washington's borrowing authority to keep the government funded and open, but the GOP not on board. And this could lead to a historic default on the nation's debt. This is President Biden is pressing his fellow Democrats to hasten their work to get ahead on his Build Back Better agenda. That $3.5 trillion plan still hung up as Democrats squabble over the details. West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin and a group of lawmakers are trying to develop a top-line number that they could support for the upcoming reconciliation bill, somewhere less than $3.5 trillion. Let's welcome in now Senior Director, Harbor Life Brokerage, Heather Zumarraga, also with us, business and market analyst Seth Denson. All right, Seth and Heather, are we going to have a government shutdown? And if so, what happens to the market, Heather?
Well, the market would decline initially. Then I think it would recover as the government reopens, because at some point in time, both Republicans and Democrats, I think all Americans agree that we need to raise the debt ceiling. Just how do we go about funding our current debt and deficits is a different story, because I think it's important to point out this is not about current spending. Raising the debt ceiling is all about money that's already been spent. But the Republican argument is that it's irresponsible to continue spending at such an unprecedented rate. And you've got the $3.5 trillion gigantic wish list from Democrats prior to the debt ceiling expiring on September 30th. The infrastructure bill, including the $3.5 trillion, is going to be on the 27th. And so Republicans are just fed up and saying, look, there's runaway inflation. We're printing way too much money. So yes, maybe we'll raise the debt ceiling to avert a government shutdown, but let's renegotiate these $3.5 trillion wish list items that are in this infrastructure plan that shouldn't be.
That's really what it's about, though, isn't it? It's about leverage, Seth. And, you know, Mitch McConnell's doing what Mitch McConnell does, and he's just saying, look, I don't have to vote for this. You guys have to. It's on you to get it done. Heather does make a good point, though. Raising the debt ceiling is for money that has already been spent. And now we hear Democrats saying, well, this September 30th deadline is kind of arbitrary, so not really that big of a deal, right? You know, you can already see them kind of playing games. You kind of see Democrats backing down here already.
Well, they're going to back down a little bit, but I agree with what Heather said, and I agree that we need to raise the debt ceiling. But here's where I'm going to be a little bit of an equal opportunity hater here, because usually we take Democrats to task. This is akin to when my doctor says I need to cut back on red meat. So when I order that 16-ounce steak, I only eat 15 ounces of it. That's what Republicans are doing with this debt ceiling argument in reality. I mean, this is all just for show. If you really want to be serious about spending, then be serious about spending when you're in power and be serious about spending when you're negotiating. That's what needs to happen here. We don't need this $3.5 trillion deal. We don't need anywhere close to it. Do I think that we probably end up with somewhere close to a $3 trillion deal? I do. I'm getting kind of flashbacks of the Cornhusker kickback we saw back during the Affordable Care Act days, and I'm sure that Joe Manchin's going to leverage that as well. But nonetheless, we've got to get spending under control. We keep hearing about more taxes. That's only going to devalue the dollar. We don't have a taxation problem or a revenue problem. We have a spending problem. And unfortunately, nobody in Washington, regardless if they got an R or a D next to their name, seems to want to do anything about it.
This is true, because that would be uncomfortable for everyone involved. Might impact your ability to get reelected. All right. So we heard from Jay Powell yesterday, Jerome Powell, for those who might not be initiated to the nicknames. But Jay Powell says the Fed is evaluating whether to launch their own digital currency, Fed coin, if you will. I guess this is inevitable, isn't it, Heather?
Well, if you look at establishing this digital dollar, I think they've been looking at it, the Fed, since May, and that's because of the rise of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum. And it's so exciting to talk about them, but you have to think about why are they so popular, and that's because of runaway inflation, tying it back into the debt ceiling and the $3.5 trillion spending plan. And people are just so sick of we're printing money as if there's no limit. And what happens is your dollar, your purchasing power as an American is going to go down, especially if wages are not kept up with the price of rising goods across the board. And so central banks around the world are considering it. You look at China. China has already banned cryptocurrencies in their country, but because they want to regulate it.
Right.
So the China's central bank is actually also looking into their own cryptocurrency because they want to make sure they have control over it.
Right. You know, whatever they got going on in the Chinese central bank with their cryptocurrency. I remain skeptical. What Jay Powell said, quote, "We live in a time of transformational innovation. around digital payments, Seth. J-PAL seems to be into it.
Yeah, listen, China's also doing it, I think, because they want to grab market share and they want to get their currency out into circulation. They're only 2% of global reserves. And they went out and said, hey, we'll take your Bitcoin, we'll take your Ethereum, and we'll give you digital you want. Listen, J-PAL's behind the times on this. If you wanted to be ahead, now he's not innovating. He's just following. I don't like the idea of a digital currency. Isn't that what my debit card is anyway? But nonetheless, I do think that we've got to think about this from a global perspective, and it does need regulation. And if this gets us one step closer to regulating cryptocurrencies, then you can count me in.
I heard your debit card is solid gold, Seth, backed in
No.
hard currency.
Depends on where it's laid down, buddy.
Great to see you both. Seth and Heather, we'll talk soon.